Captain Cisco needs a medical team sent to Science Lab 4 right away. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times is on page 294. And Chief O'Brien finds Quark's good stuff. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 23, Extreme Measures, written by our buddies Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. And by our buddies, I mean we talk about them all the time, but they haven't been on the show yet. Directed by Stephen L. Posey, and this was May 19th, 1999. Where were you? Hey, Sirach, what's up? This is going to be a party.
Yeah. Pocket full of Posey.
I bet that was his nickname. When we say Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 23, this is it. This is it. After this, there are only 2 episodes left. And this felt like the final breath before the storm, didn't it?
Yeah, there was a calmness to this episode. I would say that the pace was a little bit slower. There was just a lot of, they went into detail specifically on the Section 31 in this episode. I would say it's the calm before the storm. Sure, that makes sense. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. It also felt like what was the closest possible thing we could have to a bottle episode in these final 10 episodes. You know, that it's like a 10 episode arc. And this was like the closest thing to its own little standalone thing. That's why it kind of feels like the final breath before the plunge, you know, almost like a break.
Yeah, but there was a part of me as I was watching the episode that felt like like this episode was supposed to be somewhere else. I feel like I feel like it's misplaced in this particular part of the season.
Interesting.
Unless they had done some other things. And that's going to be my going through this episode, going to be some of my nitpicks about it. I feel like they had an opportunity in this episode to do more as it relates to the overall story arc.
Yeah.
When we had William Sadler on, I thought he gave us a lot of insight about the character Sloan and what he approached it with, as far as, his mentality of Section 31 and how they were always several steps ahead of everyone else in Starfleet, right? They knew more, they had much more access to intelligence. They had a kind of a big picture view of what was going on. And they're doing these covert things for the benefit of Starfleet, and also so that they don't get their hands dirty, Starfleet, essentially, right? And I felt like, oh, that's a great storyline. And I love the way Sadler kind of described how he had approached the character, because I felt like in his appearance that we saw in the episode before this, he did seem to be manipulative, and he knew the insides of other people. He had the inside Cardassian spy. He had a lot of people in the room that were actually working alongside him. I felt like they missed that opportunity to have him know more than Bashir. In this episode, you see him kind of leveled down, and Bashir almost knows as much as he does in a sense.
Yeah, and he was fooled fairly easily, and I was a little surprised by that. I do vaguely remember this episode, but he was, it would have been a little bit more fun to have a little bit more cat and mouse between them. However, I will say that Sloan figured out what was going on very quickly. He said, "Oh, you don't have the cure. You need the cure." So that was cool. That shows that he got it right away. And, that all of that was done really smartly. But yeah, I would have enjoyed a little bit more between the two. What I thought was cool was that we weren't just in his mind for the entire episode, which is sometimes, something that happens. You're in somebody's mind for a whole episode in a Star Trek show. But we also had a little bit of, the stuff before and the stuff after, and going back in and all that. So to me, that made it a lot easier, because if we spent 40 minutes with just the two of them walking through the halls, sometimes those kinds of episodes can be delivered really well and it ends up working. But other times I find myself going, oh boy, another one of these holodeck episodes, or another one of these it was all a dream episodes. And there are a few staples of Star Trek within those. Like, one is somebody getting hurt and being like, wait a minute, if I'm hurt in this, even though it's in my mind, or it's in a dream, or it's in a holodeck, the safety protocols are off. And that means I can really get hurt in real life, or whatever it is. And they have to raise the stakes. They have to let us know that there are consequences. You're not, because otherwise we don't care. Somebody could shoot them, anything could happen, and we don't care. But so they always have to include that, or they include if he dies in the dream, he dies for real, or something like that. So they made sure to add those parts within the episode that makes the stakes super raised. And so that worked. I felt like that saved it for me.
Excuse me.
Bless you. But otherwise, those kinds of episodes are not usually the kinds I like. And I always, when I see this, my first thought is like, oh, this is more of a Sirach episode. That's what I always think.
I was expecting more, especially from Sloane's character. I was expecting him to put up a better fight against Bashir. I was also expecting, instead of the whole episode to be about the search for the cure, I was expecting it to be more of a the two heads kind of bumping up against each other in this, where it's Bashir versus Sloane arguing at the morality of different things, why we did this, you don't understand this and that, and kind of giving it more, just to see them, the drama kind of intensify. I think Sloane's definitely capable of delivering the performance of justifying his actions, justifying what Section 31 was doing. And I was expecting to see more of the battle between that. And that's what I was kind of left a little bit disappointed. Here's the thing that bothers me. When Sloane first pops up on the scene, the thing that Bashir is angry about is why is Section 131 doing these illegal activities, causing this kind of destruction in the name of the Federation, in the name of the greater good, for example. And there was a moral dilemma between the two of them. They both saw what, Sadler saw Section 31 as, being the necessary evil in order to protect good. And Bashir was saying, no, I think you're crossing the line and you're actually doing evil, right? So there was that kind of dichotomy, and I thought it's an interesting dichotomy of arguing those points of views. When Bashir decides to become what he becomes in this episode, which is essentially break any rule to get what he needs, then he is essentially Section 31.
Yeah.
He has become Section 31 as, just as much as them. So I see the roles have reversed in this episode almost to some extent. In the beginning, Sadler was telling him why he had to bend and break rules in order to get, an ends to a mean, for example. And now we see Bashir breaking the rules, bending the rules. He has the Romulan memory scanner, which Cisco is like, okay, that's why you're not telling me about it, because I'm not supposed to know about that. So the morality ends up becoming something that Bashir is willing to cross the line in order to get the ends that he wants, the outcome, the desired outcome that he wants. And I don't think there's any difference in between the two characters. At some point, they actually show the same kind of instincts of human nature to kind of do whatever it takes to get the results you want.
Yeah, because Sloane's goal, the end to his means is supposedly saving the Federation or keeping the Federation going or protecting the Federation or whatever he convinces himself of. And what is Bashir doing? Does Bashir think what he's doing is as big as what Sloane is doing? Is he saving the Federation? Well, if he saves Odo, then he comes up with a cure for the founders, right? So that's, which are kind of their mortal enemy right now. So that almost might be a negative, right?
Right.
What's he doing? He's saving his friend.
Which is taking the needs of the many and discarding them for the needs of the few. And the few in this case is Odo, right?
Mm-hmm.
While the needs of the many are the Federation and this entire intergalactic war that they're going through with all these people involved, the Romulans, the Cardassians, everybody's involved, the Klingons, everybody's involved in this big battle. And so everyone's life is at stake. And you would think that the needs of the many would outweigh the need of the few, your friend, the one, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the logical kind of approach, or even the scientific approach, if you want to say Bashir having an analytical kind of scientific mind. It doesn't make sense that he would go through such measures unless there were more on the line, in my opinion, than just Odo.
Yeah, you also have Kira's happiness and the station's security and all that. But it's a point well taken, because I hadn't really thought of it that way, to be honest. Usually as a viewer, we just watch and we're like, oh, they're trying to save Odo. All right, cool, great. But you're right. When you think about it, you're like, well, that's kind of a selfish thing that we're all rooting for him to save Odo, but at what cost? Well, we don't really know. So at this cost, it's really just killing Sloane. Small picture. That's what we know for
Right.
sure. That's what we know for sure. He's killing Sloane to save Odo. Okay.
Right.
That's a fair trade, I guess. I think we're okay with that.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess we are okay with that. But the interesting thing too that I thought was one of the things that popped out to me in this episode was when Sloane said prior, I think in the last time he said, "You're the reason why you sleep good at night because we're protecting guys like you."
Yes.
And then he says the exact opposite in this episode, right? Where he tells Bashir, "You're the reason why. You're the reason why Starfleet. Why we need to get rid of somebody that we need to eradicate, essentially." So he went from being the reason why you're the good guy, the one we need to protect, to Sloane saying, "You're the reason why this whole thing's crumbling. It's because of guys like you that don't know how to, appreciate what's going on."
Yeah, what would have been cool is if Sloane had more episodes in Deep Space Nine. Because when you're telling me that, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe Sloane's the kind of guy that's just going to tell you whatever he thinks you want to hear, like a Garrick type. He's just manipulating this situation. You never know who, if he's telling the truth, you never know if he's lying to you, how much of it is true, all these things. And I was thinking that, and I was like, they should have just given him more episodes. Now, obviously, that's tough to do for a character that's introduced in the 7th season. Obviously, by then it's too late or whatever, but it would have been really cool if he was this recurring character that maybe came back 7 to 10 times over the course of 7 seasons. And so we'd be like, uh-oh, it's a Sloane episode, kind of like a Q episode or like a Ducat episode or whatever it is. That would have been really interesting. And then we would have really started to understand more like why he says the things he does. And the writers would have more time to flesh out the character so that it would make sense for us rather than us feeling like it's a slightly unfinished character to us. That's kind of how it feels. Is I think I would have really enjoyed
Yeah,
having him
yeah,
be this fleshed out character that just
yeah.
every 20 or so episodes he pops in and you're like, oh boy, what's this ride going to be?
And I feel like they missed a huge opportunity in this episode to plant a bunch of seeds. Even though it's the end of the show, even though it's season 7, episode 23, there could have been so many seeds dropped in this episode that make you doubt and question what you saw before. For
Mm-hmm.
example, if while they're
Yes.
digging through Sloane's paperwork and stuff, and Bashir finds out that he's responsible for the school bombing that happened on the promenade because he wanted Kai Wynn to win the election, and they were playing, they were sabotaging different things that we had already seen in the past because they were playing sides politically for Bejor and this and that. Those kinds of things that we'd already seen, we could have found out that Sloan and Section 31 were behind those kinds of things, right?
That would be so fun. I just want to jump in real quick and say, like, if they even just threw us a couple little Easter eggs of like you're saying, like little nuggets from prior episodes, because we're
Mm-hmm,
on episode 171. How cool would
mm-hmm,
it have been if they said, oh yeah, and then what? The planet on the episode Meridian, that was Section 31's doing, or you know what I mean? Like
mm-hmm.
all this kind
Yeah,
of stuff, like a couple little things, that would feel
the
so sad.
Maquis,
Yeah,
the
that would feel
Maquis.
so satisfying for us as the viewer, like almost
Yeah,
like closing the book on the series of Deep Space Nine, saying like going back down memory lane and how this has been infused throughout. Yeah,
yes,
that's a really
yes.
fun idea.
And that's why they could have spent more time they could have went right to the beginning to whatever's in his mind, and the whole episode be about, can you believe I found the file? Eddington was Section 31 this whole time,
Yes, yes.
and we could have just found out more stuff. And I also would have said, if I don't know when Voyager takes place. Does it take place after Deep Space Nine?
Concurrent, it starts, I believe, during the 6th season of Deep Space Nine, if I remember correctly, which would mean that
No,
they're
no,
in
no.
they're
The
in their second
timeline, the
season.
timeline, the
Yeah,
timeline of Voyager. It takes place in the future or at the same time as Deep
it
Space
takes
Nine,
place, yeah, at the same time as Deep Space Nine, but so
in a
basically,
different quadrant.
yes, season 1 of Voyager, I think, is season 6 of Deep Space Nine. So the events that are happening right now are going at the same time as the events that are happening in season 2 of Voyager. Let me do some quick math, but I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that could have also been an opportunity, for example, to drop some gems about upcoming storylines in Voyager, right? What is this Voyager? These plans for this ship, this Voyager ship. I mean, whatever stuff that you would see eventually coming up in Voyager could have been dropped in this episode. Basically, Section 31 has a program, and it's going to be something that we're going to eventually see on Voyager. It could have been another kind of little hidden gem in there. There was so many hidden gems they could have put in this episode, relating to the Klingons and relating to even Ducat's surgery from to become a Bajoran was actually done by an undercover Section 31 agent. Like there could be so much more information there that Bashir could get a hold of. Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I misspoke. It was Next Generation. There was only 2 seasons concurrent with Deep Space Nine. So, I mean, it's basically the same answer, but Voyager started around the 3rd
4.
season
Yeah.
of Deep Space Nine and then went through like that. But basically, yeah, at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, so they could have dropped hints into the Voyagers,
That's really
whatever
smart.
what's going on over there. It would have been great. Hey, they're involved in this, and this. Chakotay, I see Chakotay's. It could have been a whole bunch of stuff, right? Um, and there could have been so many things that we'd already seen that would have been explained better, and we would have known that Section 31 had this hidden hand this whole time behind a bunch of storylines that we thought were just one-offs, or we thought had just had to do with whatever it was. It would just replay those things in our head and say, hey, yeah, you know what, no, and yeah, when the Troubles with Tribble episode happened, now it makes sense. That's what was going, there could have been so many things like that.
Or even a nice way that Star Trek tends to do this. I'm trying to remember which episode it's reminding me of. Yes, I remember. It was when Odo was first linked with the Great Link. And he later comes back and he says, it was more like there was something that they were trying to hide from me. And so it's like, he doesn't mention it then, but he mentions it at the end of the episode. Like, there was one other thing I saw. That would have been a great time for, Bashir to do it. At the very end, when he's talking with O'Brien at night, he's just like, there was just one thing, just one more thing. That Bashir, and he's like, when we were just about to leave, I got one little glance of, and there's some kind of little nugget that is, that it is pertaining to the next couple episodes or something too. That would also be a really fun way to do it.
Absolutely. And that's why I feel like they missed a lot here, because they took away Bill Sadler's biggest power as portraying Sloan, which is that he knows everything that's going on. And that's his superpower, right? That he has more information than the next guy. And I feel like he could have been more coy about using that information in this episode to dangle certain things in front of Bashir, like you trust Cisco, and play seeds of doubt. Like, what do you mean? Do I trust Cisco? Well, I know that Captain Cisco, and he can give us just a little nugget of backstory there that makes you say, "Oh, is he lying, or is it is it true?" Or there could have been moments there that he could have played this knowledge that he has over Bashir, over Column, and say, I know about Keiko and that miscarriage and something like, just like a whole bunch of personal stuff that could have been like, how do you know about that? And I feel like they could have expanded upon Sloane's knowledge base more.
Yeah, well, I think that, this is all fun, and I would love to see this kind of thing come to fruition. It's really nice, but I understand why they couldn't delve too deep into the Sloan thing, is because the main story was not really Sloan. The main story is getting the cure for Odo in the big picture of this 10 episode arc. So that's why I think, what you're saying is a good point, that episode could have just been better earlier on, so that it could have been solely focused on what's going on there. But in this case, it's within this 10 episode arc. So this is just kind of like the mission that they have to take in order to get the thing that they need for this bigger arc. So it's kind of like an interesting mix there. We'll get more into that. We got to hop to our break, and we'll come right back on that there seventh rule.